Madam President, last month, the Democratic staff on the Finance Committee put out a report documenting the staggering shortage of treatment services in America for those suffering from opioid addiction. This report surveyed a cross-section of American communities and found that there is a yawning treatment gap keeping so many from getting the help they need. Nearly 90% of Americans suffering from opioid addiction, according to the most current analyses, are not receiving the treatment they need. 90%, Madam President. The treatment gap is caused by a shortage of available treatment services across the country. And even where these services do exist, they're overwhelmed by demand. This gap is straining rural communities that are already struggling to provide other essential medical services. Asking these communities to provide care when they're stretched in such incredibly thin ways forces them into impossible choices. The result is even more lives in America are lost to opioid addiction. Earlier this year, after Congress passed legislation called CARA, authorizing anti-addiction programs, members did an awful lot of celebrating, an awful lot of victory laps, and fired off a forest of press releases. But that program didn't put a penny, that act didn't put a penny into these essential treatment programs. And I just wanted to come to the floor because we're looking at another crucial time to help those suffering from addiction. The press releases don't do anything for people suffering from these horrible illnesses who might turn next to heroin. And when nearly 9 out of 10 addicted to opioids aren't getting treatment, clearly there is much more that needs to be done. So it is critical in this lame duck session to follow through with funding. Now, I've been encouraged, Madam President, by several of the conversations that have taken place over the last few days about finding a path forward to ensuring that there be real funds for treating opioid addiction. But I've seen some of these debates before. I've been encouraged before, only to see once again the chance for progress stall out. And I'd like to note that I believe that there's a special reason right now to stand up for patients and making sure that they have access to treatment, that they have what they need. In the next few weeks, the Congress is going to consider another piece of legislation called the 21st Century Cures Bill. This will be a bill designed to encourage research and scientific development of new pharmaceuticals, fast-tracking the development of pharmaceuticals. I don't take a back seat to anyone, Madam President, when it comes to supporting innovation and scientific research. In fact, early in my Senate days, I chaired the Senate Science Subcommittee, so I know how important it is. But at the same time, this piece of legislation will also offer a great benefit to the large pharmaceutical companies in America. So the Congress will be considering the Cures Bill with the backdrop of so many who are addicted to opioids not being able to get access to treatment, and they're going to be concerned about how there'll be more research for new drugs, and we want to see these cures, and they're going to ask, how are we going to be able to afford them? We want the cures. but we also want to be able to afford these medicines. And every time now you look at a football game, you see dozens of ads for blockbuster drugs, but Americans watch those ads and say, yes, we want those cures. Yes, we want the scientific progress, but please, Congress, think about policies that are going to allow us to get those drugs. So it's no wonder why a recent editorial pointed out that it was cheaper to fly round trip to India for a hepatitis C treatment than to get it here in the United States. People see these bills piling up. If they're able to afford their medications today, they're saying, are we going to lose access tomorrow? So here's the bottom line to me for the fall, Madam President. Here's the bottom line for where we ought to go. Yes, we should support medical breakthroughs and research into cures, but let us not keep the patients out of the debate. Let us make sure that we add the funds needed for treatment for those who are addicted to opioids. And as we look at this issue of cures, let us also look at policies to make sure that people can afford their medicines. The Finance Committee's been looking at these issues. For example, recently I raised a serious objection when I learned that a panel meant to be studying how to turn the tide on opioid addiction was stocked with people closely tied to opioid manufacturers. We blew the whistle on that, and 4 nominees to the panel were dismissed. So we've got a lot to do this fall, Madam President. I know the time is short, but yes, let's promote these new cures. Yes, let's make sure that people who are addicted to opioids have new opportunities for treatment. And as we look at drug development, let's make sure that we don't see so many Americans on the outside looking in as prices go up and up and up. There's more work to be done on both fronts: ensuring access to new science, ensuring access to treatment services, ensuring access to affordable medicines. That's what we ought to be focusing on this fall. And with that, Madam President, I yield the floor.